A student named Run escapes from homeschool, sprinting away, but a staff member catches up to him, sedates him, and takes him back. Meanwhile, a group of parents arrives at the school to take the entrance exam for their children and is interviewed by the principal. All the parents give the same response, stating they want the best for their children and believe only homeschool can provide that. In the lounge, students wait for the results. Headmaster Yanni enters and calls for the scholarship applicants, leading them to the principal's office. There, Mr. Amin, the principal, interviews Maki and Tibet to students applying for the program and, satisfied with their responses, grants them admission. Later, Maki, at her orphanage, receives a confirmation letter and prepares to join the boarding school. Upon arrival, she's shown to her dorm, given her uniform, and directed to the garden where a welcome event is being held. All selected students are there, enjoying chocolate cookies as they introduce themselves. Mr. Amin and Headmaster Yanni arrive, and Mr. Amin greets them as the new Gen 6 students of homeschool. He outlines the school rules, but suddenly the lights go out. Panic spreads, and the students lose consciousness as they realize they've been drugged. The next day, the students awaken, one by one, on a bus in an unfamiliar area, eventually arriving at the actual homeschool building where Mr. Amin and Yanni are waiting. Mr. Amin welcomes them again, reminding them of the first rule: no phones are allowed. Yanni collects their phones, storing them away. In the days that follow, the students are gradually introduced to homeschool's strict regulations, with Mr. Amin and Yanni consistently reinforcing that rule breakers will face punishment. They must wake up early, go to bed early, and cook their own food. But in there only Maki knows how to cook, so she ends up preparing meals for everyone. A few days later, Mr. Amin addresses the Gen 6 students, acknowledging their challenges and noting that previous students face the same. The students protest, wanting to return home, but Mr. Amin asks them what home means to them, leaving everyone silent. He then emphasizes the importance of staying within school grounds and warns against venturing into the forest. However, a group of students, defying his instructions, sneaks into the forest to escape. Maki, Tibet, and Penwang are among those sent to search for the runaway group. As the escapees realize the forest seems endless, they start to argue, and most decide to return to homeschool. They meet up with Maki's group and make their way back. However, Headmaster Yanni sends them out again, saying they must return with everyone. At nightfall, the remaining escapees begin arguing again, but panic strikes when they hear distant screams for help. The two boys flee, leaving their companion, Jingjai, alone. She tries to follow, but falls and injures her ankle. The two boys soon encounter a staff member who escorts them back to homeschool. Meanwhile, Maki's group finds Jingjai, helps her, and, guided by a staff member, returns to homeschool. Back at the school, Mr. Amin reprimands the students for attempting to escape, then answers his earlier question, saying that home is a place of safety, and now they are each other's home. The students head to bed, but Maki lingers, noticing a framed picture of Run on the wall. It's revealed that Run is her older brother, and her real name is Ren. As she gazes at Run's picture, Mr. Amin enters. Maki asks about Run, and Mr. Amin smiles, telling her that Run was his favorite student. She then inquires about his whereabouts, but Mr. Amin simply smiles in response. The next morning, all Gen 6 students head outside for their daily exercise. Master Champ, the pay teacher, has them run laps around the lake. The students complain, finding it too demanding, but Master Champ insists it's actually the easiest exercise. Afterward, they return to the common room for breakfast, where Master Phobin serves their meals. The food is exceptionally tasty, but when students ask for seconds, Master Phobin informs them that each person is allowed only one plate at a time. Later that day, Mr. Amin introduces the students to all the teachers at homeschool and announces that there will be no classes during the first week. Instead, the students are given an unusual assignment. Each must care for a pet duckling. However, he warns that those who fail to look after their duck will face serious punishment. Each student is given a duckling, and they soon gather to care for them. Some students work together to build a shelter for the ducks, while Maki and Penwang look for food for the ducklings. Among the shelter builders, 3 students shirk their duties, leaving the hard work to their peers. When Maki and the others return with duck feed, Penwang offers the ducks water and goes to get the feed. 2 of the students who avoided helping decide to play a prank and purposely trip Penwang, causing him to fall. Pretending to assist, they end up bullying him further, which leads Penwang to have a panic attack. A fight breaks out among the students. but Mrs. Yanni steps in and takes them inside for lunch. When the students find the bread at lunch stale, they ask Master Finn for fresh food, but he declines. After lunch, the students return to their ducklings, and Penguin names his baby duck, with others following suit and naming their own ducklings. A few days later, Mr. Amin gathers the students and asks what they've learned from caring for the ducks. When no one has an answer, he says they need to spend more time with the ducklings to understand their lesson. The students complain, questioning the purpose of this task. In response, Mr. Amin promises a great prize for those who care for their ducks until a specified day, reinvigorating the students' commitment. Yet, the two boys who previously bullied Penguin continue to avoid responsibility, coercing him into taking care of their ducks as well. Meanwhile, Jingjai, still recovering from her injury, also asks her friends for help. One night, a storm strikes, and Penguin brings his and the two boys' ducks inside to keep them safe. The following day, two other boys visit the duck shelter only to find it completely destroyed by the storm, with all the ducks missing. Desperate to avoid punishment, the students embark on a search for the missing ducklings. After a long day, they manage to find only one. They approach Penguin, asking for his help in locating the others, and he agrees. Penguin eventually finds all the ducklings and brings them back to the shelter by nightfall. However, with the shelter still in ruins, the students decide to search the forest for materials to rebuild it. During their search, Mackie and the others stumble upon an old temple-like structure, fenced off with wire. Curious, Mackie is about to climb over when Master Pratt appears and escorts them back to homeschool. Later that night, Hugo and Jingjai step outside to talk about their relationship. While chatting, Jingjai notices one of the ducklings has died. They check and realize it's Hugo's duck. In the middle of the night, Mr. Amin summons all the students to the meeting room. Annoyed and confused by the late gathering, the students listen as Mr. Amin announces that Penguin's duckling has died, and as a result, he will face punishment. Everyone, including Penguin, argues that the dead duckling isn't his, but Mr. Amin sends Penguin away regardless. The next morning at breakfast, Miss Yanni mentions a special ingredient in the meal. Horrified, the students realize the meat is from their ducklings. Shocked and devastated, they confront Headmaster Yanni, who coldly explains that it's a punishment for their behavior. She then announces that it's the first day of term, and all students must attend class on time. The students rush outside, hoping their ducklings are still alive, but they're nowhere to be found. Refusing to attend class in protest, they sit outside. Master Pratt approaches, asking why they're not in class, but the students run away instead. Barely making it down the hallway, they're stopped by Master Phobin, and Master Pratt escorts them back to class. Inside, Master Pratt locks the door to prevent anyone from leaving and assigns them their first task, writing a confession about a mistake they've made since arriving. He warns they won't leave until everyone completes this assignment. The following morning, Mackie wakes up from a dream about her brother, Ron, and realizes she and the girls are late for morning exercise. Some girls are reluctant to go, but they eventually head to Master Champ, where some boys are already running. The latecomers are made to sit and watch their friends run as punishment. When breakfast arrives, the food is burnt and undercooked. The students complain, but the headmaster insists they eat it as is, saying it's another punishment. Later, Mackie and another girl, White, ask the headmaster about Penguin's condition and if they can visit him. Headmaster Yanni replies that he's being treated and that they can visit after classes. In math class with Master Deluxe, the students receive an answer sheet to fill out. They learn that if anyone fails, the entire class will be given more questions. Frustrated by the harsh treatment, they comply reluctantly. Meanwhile, in the detention room, Master Phobin gives Penguin a pill to calm his anxiety. Left alone, Penguin expresses his fear of confinement, revealing he came to homeschool to avoid such situations. It's clear that Mr. Amin provided the pill specifically to ease Penguin's distress. Mackie and White visit Penguin, bringing him food and discussing the duck incident. Penguin insists that the dead duck wasn't any of the students, leading Mackie to suspect it was a setup by the masters. White agrees, calling the punishments extreme. They approach the masters for answers, but receive none. Later that night, White, Mackie, and two others discuss their punishments and the possible reasons behind them. White shares that she came to homeschool to escape a cruel relative, and Mackie wonders if the dead duckling belonged to someone else, not Penguin. As they sit there speculating, they notice Mr. Amin watching them from the balcony, smiling. At dinner, Master Phobin hands an extra plate to Jingjai, assigning her the responsibility of feeding Penwang from now on. The next morning, Master Champ subjects the students to extra push-ups. Frustrated, Hugo stands up, expressing that the situation is spiraling out of control. Maki agrees, saying that someone framed Penwang. This statement leads the students to confront Hugo and Jingjai, urging them to confess. Hugo admits to Mr. Amin that Penwang's duck didn't die. Instead, his own duck had died, and he swapped the name tags. Mr. Amin acknowledges that he was already aware of the swap. He then delivers a lecture on honesty, announcing that all punishments are now over. He also reveals that the ducklings are alive, and that the dead duckling wasn't any of theirs, it was all part of a test. Penwang is released, and the ducklings are returned to the students. While Penwang tends to his duck, Hugo and Jingjai approach him to apologize for their actions, and he forgives them. Shortly after, the students are summoned to the meeting room, where Mr. Amin and the masters announce that Maki will be the student president of Gen 6. Later, Mr. Amin calls Maki into his office, explaining her responsibilities as class president and urging her to help the masters maintain discipline. When Maki asks why he chose her, he replies that she reminds him of someone important, hinting that she may meet this person someday. That night, Mr. Amin gathers all the students and announces that one of them will get the chance to go home over the weekend. However, the students must collectively choose who among them deserves this privilege. The next day, in Master Friefan's class, they're tasked with writing letters to their parents about their life at school. Master Friefan offers them the option to skip the task if they feel uncomfortable. Some students playfully wrestle, while others focus on their letters. Fuji, a girl in the class, begins to write but stops, remembering her father's harshness when he sent her to homeschool. In the common room, the students debate who should go home. Flang, a girl who claims to feel unwell, expresses her desire to go home, believing it would improve her health. Later that night, in the boys' dorm, Mek asks his friends for their votes, but they refuse. Zhang, another student, bribes the others with the promise of 1,000,000 baht for each vote. Penwang argues that bribing for votes is unfair, but Zhang defends his actions, saying he just wants to go home. Another boy points out that the money is meaningless if they're stuck in homeschool for 3 more years. The following day, Mek approaches the girls and offers his help for a year if they vote for him. His twin, mocks him for trying to gain votes this way, especially since he can't offer 1,000,000 baht like Zhang. White, another student, declares that she vote for someone who truly deserves it, like Penwang, who's been through a lot. Zhang later confronts White with his 1,000,000 baht offer, but she declines. During garden duty, Flang feels dizzy and sits down, only to collapse moments later. Her classmates rush her to the infirmary, but as soon as they leave, she gets up. She isn't sick, but has been pretending to gain sympathy. The next day, in the kitchen with Penwang and Hugo, Flang deliberately cuts herself while preparing food, feigning an accident. She cries, saying she wants to go home to her mother. Outside, Fuji observes Flang's act and is visibly upset. She later confronts Flang, accusing her of faking her injuries, but Flang denies it. In the common room, Biu, a friend of Flang, asks if anyone has seen her. White replies that she went to the kitchen. When Biu checks, she finds Flang unconscious on the floor. That night, Flang wakes up in the infirmary with Master Friefan beside her. Master Friefan gently suggests that she share any concerns with the masters, and Flang tearfully admits she wants to go home. The next day, Headmaster Yanni announces that Flang has won the most votes and will be allowed to go home. However, Fuji stands up, declaring the vote invalid, accusing Flang of faking her injuries and illness. Flang denies Fuji's claims, leading to a heated argument. Mr. Amin intervenes, asking Flang if she's still claiming innocence, then reveals camera footage showing Flang deliberately injuring herself to manipulate her classmates. Mr. Amin announces that, as a result of Flang's deceit, no one will be allowed to go home since the students are not ready yet. He leaves, and Flang breaks down, realizing no one, not even her best friend Biu, believes her. In the girls' dorm, Flang tries to apologize, asking why everyone is treating her this way, but they all scold her for lying. Fang runs out of the dorm in tears, leaving Flang alone. Later, Maki and White return to the dorm, telling the girls they should have given Flang a chance to apologize. Realizing Flang is missing, they go outside to search for her. Outside, Maki suggests informing the masters when suddenly White spots Flang standing on the balcony, seemingly prepared to jump. The students gather, trying to stop her, Tibet manages to talk Fleng down, reassuring her that no one hates her and she doesn't need to harm herself. She steps away from the balcony, sobbing. Later, Fleng tries to apologize to Biu for betraying her trust, but Biu walks away, leaving Fleng devastated. Maki consoles her, saying Biu will forgive her eventually. All students are later summoned to the meeting room, where Mrs. Yanni announces that an exam will be held the next day. The students protest, pointing out they barely studied since the term started and fear they won't pass. The headmaster assures them that the exam will test what they have learned so far in homeschool. The next morning, Mr. Amin arrives and explains that any student who passes all 3 rounds of the exam will be permitted to use their phone in school. He also mentions that they can use any method necessary to pass. Hyogo's face lights up at this, and he tells the others not to worry if they fail, as only one student has ever passed all 3 exams. Maki inquires about the student's name, and Mr. Amin reveals it was Run. The students are allowed to choose a subject they feel confident in. So, Maki, Tibet, and Fleng select English, while White, Penwing, Hugo, and Jingjai opt for mathematics. Then Fuji and Mok go for history, while Mek and Zhang choose physical education and Biu picks agriculture. As the exam begins, Mr. Amin wishes them all luck. Hugo and Jingjai have only chosen mathematics so they can copy from Penwing, who excels in the subject. Jingjai and White get into a brief argument, but eventually work together to solve the problems. Maki, Tibet, and Fleng work as a team and manage to pass, while in history, only Nai succeeds. Both Mek and Zhang fail their physical exam, and Biu doesn't pass her agriculture exam either. The students who passed proceed to Master Friefin's class for the second round, while those who failed watch from the meeting room. The next challenge is a game of musical chairs, and Master Friefin informs them they can use any tactic to secure a seat. Hugo grins and asks if this includes using force, to which Master Friefin replies, "Everything is allowed." The students watching from the meeting room start placing baits on who will be disqualified first. Biu predicts the boys will win, while Fuji insists the girls will prevail. Zhang bets that Fleng will be eliminated first, while Mek thinks it will be Hugo or Jingjai. Mog, on the other hand, believes Penwing will be the first out. The game begins, and chaos ensues as students scramble for seats. Tibet shoves Hugo aside, and White pushes Jingjai out of the way. Everyone but Hugo and Jingjai manages to secure a chair. With only one chair remaining, Hugo rushes for it and instructs Jingjai to steal Fleng's seat. Jingjai shoves Fleng out of her chair and claims it for himself. White becomes furious with Jingjai's behavior, and they begin yelling at each other as tensions flare in the game. White accuses Jingjai of being heartless, and Jingjai retorts that she was just following the rules. Their argument escalates, disturbing Penwing, who starts having a panic attack. As the tension builds, Tibet suddenly stands up, causing the bickering to halt. Master Friefin watches intently, but doesn't intervene. Tibet suggests that if the chairs are causing so much trouble, they should simply destroy them. He picks up his chair and smashes it on the ground, breaking it. The situation escalates into physical fights. White squares off with Jingjai, while Tote and Neef clash with Hugo. Penwing's panic intensifies as Fleng tries unsuccessfully to calm him down. Maki intervenes, shouting for everyone to stop, arguing that fighting isn't helping anyone. Tibet then asks Maki for her suggestion, and she proposes they restart the game and play fairly. They ask Master Friefin for permission to start over, and she agrees. With the game reset, the round begins again. Tote and Nai try to tackle Hugo to keep him out of the way, while White pushes Jingjai back. Meanwhile, Maki, Penwing, and Fleng secure their seats. The failed students watch and cheer for Maki and her friends. Just then, Headmaster Yanni arrives and asks the failed students if they understand why they didn't pass. They each provide an answer, but Mrs. Yanni tells them they're all wrong and challenges them to figure it out. In the game, as the music stops, everyone grabs a seat. Jingjai shoves Maki out of her chair and claims it, but Penwing pushes Jingjai, allowing Maki to reclaim her spot. Jingjai and Hugo continue fighting over the last seat until time runs out, disqualifying them both. Master Friefin then instructs the students to remove all the chairs but one. When asked if only one student can pass this round, she clarifies that more than one may pass. As the final round starts, Tote and Nai race for the remaining chair, but Maki stops them. She points out that Master Friefin never specified they had to sit in the chair just to sit. Maki sits on the ground, and the others follow her lead, allowing them all to pass the exam. For the final round, held by Principal Mr. Amin, they're taken to his office, where he reveals the last challenge. He will ask them a single question, and whoever answers correctly will earn the chance to call their family. Mr. Amin hands each of them a blank sheet of paper, saying it's their task to figure out what to do with it. They have 1 hour to find the answer, with only one chance to respond. If they're wrong, they'll be disqualified. Leaving Mr. Amin's office, the students begin brainstorming, each attempting different methods. Some wet the paper, others freeze or heat it, but no hidden message appears. When the time is up, they reconvene in Mr. Amin's office to share their answers. Penwing guesses nothing as the answer, reasoning that if there's nothing on the paper, they can't find anything. Mr. Amin declares his answer wrong and disqualifies him, giving the others another hour to solve the puzzle. The remaining students gather by the lake to contemplate their motivations. They discuss who they would call and why. Maki admits she doesn't want to call anyone. She just wants to uncover Mr. Amin's true intentions. Nai wants to call his father, White wants to report the homeschool to the police, and Tibet hopes to contact his mother to check on her health. Back in the dorm, they realize that the only one who knows the answer to the blank sheet's mystery is Mr. Amin himself. The students decide to submit the blank sheets, allowing Master Amin to answer his own question. Meanwhile, Mrs. Yanni speaks to the failed students, asking if they've understood why they didn't pass. Receiving no answer, she tells them it was their selfishness and greed for personal gain that led to their failure. In Master Amin's office, Maki, White, Nai, and Tibet present the blank sheets, explaining that the answer depends on what he intended to teach them. Master Amin commends them for reaching the correct answer as a team and asks who among them should receive the reward. Maki suggests they vote, and everyone votes for Tibet, but when Master Amin hands him the phone, Tibet declines, saying that if his friends can't share the reward, he doesn't want it either. That night, Master Freefin visits Mr. Amin to discuss the treatment of Run, warning that his approach might be dangerous and could even kill Run. Despite the warning, Mr. Amin insists on continuing the treatment. Meanwhile, the 4 students reflect on their day. White complains that it was a wasted opportunity, but Maki counters, saying they received something invaluable, the reward of friendship. Looking out the window, Maki spots Master Prasad and Freefin heading into the forest. Curious, she tries to follow them, but Nai stops her. Elsewhere, Master Amin goes to Run's room, where Run is tied to a chair to prevent him from escaping. Mr. Amin tells Run about the new Gen 6 students, noting how Maki reminds him of Run. Then, covering Run's face with a bag, he declares that he will cure him. So guys, this is not the ending of this story. If you want second part, then do comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Till then, watch another cool videos.